Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Sunday night stream with the one and only, backed by popular demand, Mitch Brisker.
Thanks, Alex. I'm having my breakfast, so it's not nighttime here. But one of the great things about living on the flat Earth that we live on. Anyways, great to be here.
How are you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing fantastic. I've been having a lot of fun with the letter I got from Golden Era Productions.
I think that's actually a really good place to start, because I haven't had a chance to catch up on the stream you did with Aaron yesterday, but I did see the headline. I saw the headline that they're trying to sue you. Do you what?
No. They're not trying. They're not trying to sue me at all. If they were trying to sue me, they would have had a process server show up. No, they're not suing me. They're threatening me. I'm threatening to sue them for workplace harassment, criminal bullying, and elder abuse. But I'm half joking about that. But also, if you're listening, it's all documented. No. They're just threatening me. They're trying to make me feel bad. I can grab the letter and read you portions of it. I read some of it on.
If you want to, it's up to you. Vegan free
they are just it's kind of. I think a lot of your viewers heard it last night. But yeah, let me just grab it, okay?
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
You can talk to my headphones. I'll leave them there. So.
I like it much better when Mitch does that. I'm joking. He'll watch this back later, and he'll hear that, and he'll find that funny. Hello, everybody in the chat. Hello, Mrs. J. We love a bit of Mrs. J. Hello to Goldie, Joe, Auntie, Bet. Awesome. Thank you. Hello. Nice to see a lot of you in the chat. I was just saying really horrible things about you while you're gone.
I hope so, because when you were late, I was chatting earlier with our wonderful audience, and they're sworn to secrecy about what I told them about you. So remember, I had a whole 15 minutes.
I know. I'm sorry.
What do we say? No, it's totally fine. To natter on about you. So
nattering. That's against.
Yeah, remember
policy,
that?
Mitch.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to natter.
I know. Yeah, but nonetheless, no. I told them to go to my channel and watch this, and don't tell Alex. So
that's the point. No, that's the point. If anyone is watching on my stream, go and check out Mitch's channel. There is a link in the description, and go watch it on Mitch's channel so that he can get the watch hours and get monetized and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I need all the help I can get.
Denver Stevo, I come for the Alex, but stay for the Mitch. Thank you, man, and welcome. Go and watch this same stream on Mitch's channel. It's the same content. It's just you're giving him the help that he needs. I've already been monetized. I don't need the help.
I did get monetized.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah, I pulled it off in 20.
But in that case, stay here, you filthy.
Yeah. No. Oh, I got to get used to it. Don't listen to this guy. Now, whatever. You know what you can do? I think you can just open 2 tabs, right?
You can.
And stream it on both. So go ahead. Okay, good. This is the letter. I'm not going to hold it up very quick because I don't want to freeze it. There's definitely some things in here that I'll address at a later time. Certain things need to evolve, gestate, so forth. But interestingly enough, this is from the port captain of Gold. She would be the legal representative. They said it from the quote unquote, it's not confidential anymore, but they still don't broadcast it a lot. But they sent it from that address. Like this stationery is from the actual address of Golden Era Productions, not from the
in Gilman Hot Springs.
Yeah, in Gilman Hot Springs. It's actually the official address is in San Jacinto.
Because I find that it's a slight tangent, but I've always found it really interesting when people like Aaron say it's the confidential base, you're not allowed to know where it is.
No, it's not.
There's literally a video on YouTube. Like when I was in Scientology, I knew where it was because it's a video on YouTube. If you go on the Scientology website, it tells you exactly where the gold base is, and it talks about it from a perspective of gold, but it always has a sentence or a line in there talking about this is where international management is based. So
yeah, right.
It was never when I was in anyway. It wasn't a massive secret. It's not like you weren't allowed to know where it was. There's literally a video on the Scientology YouTube page showing you where it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I first went up there in 1990, it was and before that especially, it was super secret because they were trying to secure a safe place for Hubbard. They had a program called the All Clear program, and they were trying to get the All Clear to bring them out there. So it was, it was like people were brought up there. They had heads hoods over their head, and they didn't know where they were. I mean, I had no idea where it was until the day that I drove up there. But yeah, after a while, I mean, two things that Miscavige did, marketing wise, these really tie in with media. Are he said he realized that keeping it a secret or continue once Google Maps hit, game over. Anybody in the world could just inspect it from a satellite. He said, this is ridiculous. And then he made that brochure. Remember, there's a brochure. He sent it up to everybody, had the location. So he just said, screw that. And it was right. That calmed it down a bit. And then the other thing he did was to put the e-meter in an ad and show it on the Super Bowl, because that was supposed to be some secret devious device. And so but those were both, they're just still manipulation. They're just in a different way, because anyway, it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know how we got into all that. Oh yeah, so it's from the address in San Jacinto, 19625 Gilman Springs Road, San Jacinto, California, 92583. If anybody would like to write to Gold directly, that would be how you would do it. You could bypass the LA office, and entirely, because usually they write it from the office on Ivar, which is where all the CSI mail, which is where OSA is, where the Elrich Life Exhibition is. That Elrich Life Exhibition, which I designed, I refer to it as the Scientology Ripley's Believe It or Not, because it's right down the street from Ripley's Believe It or Not. So it's
excellent.
You can go there, and then you can go see Hubbard's Believe It or Not. It's mostly Believe It or Not. So anyway, the phone number, if you're interested, 951-654-5347. If anybody wants to call the receptionist and say hello. Anyway, so it says, Dear Mitch, you have violated both your contract and the multiple NDA agreements you signed with us. For anybody who doesn't know, that's a non-disclosure agreement contract, which forbids you from disclosing certain things under some contractual requirements, usually against a penalty for disclosure. You agreed to pay, and this is in bold type, so this is serious. I mean, this is like, this is, this is printed with extra ink because it's in bold, so I have to take it very seriously. You agreed to pay liquidated damages to Gold of $25,000 per violation of your contract and NDAs. I have calculated at least 30 violations to date. That's $750,000. Gold Era Productions paid you more than $8.4 million for your professional services. So anyway, there you go. That's basically the opening of it. And then it has some wonderful things at the end. Some wonderful things. This is the bullying. This is the emotional bullying that they actually, it's reflective of their internal world. And
I think also you've got to remember that it's not Scientology policy to sue, right? It's policy to threaten to sue. The whole point is intimidation and trying to scare you into silence.
Yeah, this letter is exactly.
OSA's statistic is dismissed attackers, right? So what they want to do is scare them to stop talking about your experiences in Scientology. They're not actually, well, they may sue you, but that's not their goal. They're told to threaten to sue.
I mean,
the threat will go away.
Yeah, they would do better by saying, "Dear Mitch, we
stop.
are deeply, or we are deeply saddened by this news because we love you."
Yeah,
that would more likely get a person to go, "Ow, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing." But check this out. Check this out. Along the lines of exactly what you just said, Alex. Stop fooling yourself. Now, note the language which is intended to hijack my thoughts, right? It's very subtle, but if I'm fooling myself, that's a thought process. So now they're trying to take control of my thoughts. This is what they do. Stop fooling yourself. You are following the dictates of someone, your psychologist, ? Who is manipulating you into a reality that is false and which you know is false. You are now a man who turned on and spread lies about the people who not only have the ability to help others, even those like you who consider themselves beyond salvage. Like I never said, like, they're trying to implant me with this idea that I said that I was beyond salvage. Never happened.
Right.
But who helped you most. Deep inside, you know what you have done to your own goodness. We will endure your lies. You won't. The overt act is too great for your own spirit. Nothing will ever replace what you have now lost. Your honor, your real friends. Mitch, I suggest you carefully reflect on your conduct and stop violating your agreements.
I mean, like, it just, if you think about what they're actually saying, it's such a contradiction. They said you need to think, like, you know, sit in the corner and think about what you've done. You know, you've now lost everything. They said everything you've now lost. But in the same sentence, they're saying, we're your friends, come back. You haven't lost us. Like, exactly. Well, which way is it? Do they want you to stop doing it, come back and apologize, and we're all good? You know, we're old friends. Let's forget everything, and, you know, draw a line in the sand and just carry on? Or are they saying you're a horrible person, what are you doing, stop doing this, and you've lost any hope you ever had in Scientology? You can't say the two things at the same time. They're complete opposites.
And don't you think also, Alex, that there's some subtext of, like, how could they hire somebody like me to begin with? I mean, I went in there and saved them. Anyway. It's ridiculous.
Well, you know, are you okay? Firstly, that's my main question. You're not letting it get to you, are you? Yeah.
What was my reaction when I got this?
Yeah. Are you okay?
I was no, it was actually triggering. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Right.
It was actually triggering, but I mean, I knew the moment that I opened it, it was from FedEx. And the last I heard, FedEx is not considered a legal mechanism for delivering legal. It's just, you know. And then when I went out with Aaron last night, and he was nice enough to bring his lawyer friend Zach on, and
Zach Morgan,
and Aaron asked, huh? Did you see that?
Zach Morgan, yeah.
Zach Morgan.
I was watching it up. I watched I think it was about 10-15 minutes, and it was just when he texted Zach and said, "Oh, Zach's free. I'm going to bring him on," and then I had to jump off. But
yeah, so yes, Zach gave a very brilliant legal interpretation of what it means, because he said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, it sounds like," I forget the exact words, but he said it sounds like a mad girlfriend who got jilted at the prom.
Yeah.
That was it.
That's exactly what it is. Like, you think about, I mean, let's not talk about it too much, because that's not the purpose of our video, but just, you know, also I don't know, Scientology is very childish in the way that it approaches talking to people when they've done wrong. And I think it's quite an interesting thing, having been out of Scientology, to see a letter or read something like this. It's like, God, that's the way they talk to their staff on a daily basis. And when you've been out and you don't have people talking to you like that, it must be a bit like, wow, how on earth was...
I know. But I was, because, you know, so much trauma is stored in your body. It's, well, maybe it all is. Your body is very reflexive. And so I definitely was having traumatic reflexive reaction, which it was kind of, you know, once I could rationalize my way out of it, because I was like, and then I read it again and again, and I'm like, oh, this is boring, you know. And there's some stuff in there I don't want out, and it's probably going to come out, and I'm probably going to be the one to bring it out. There's more to this story. But shame on them. Everybody's entitled to the private life. And then plus they get information from you under the guise of the priest penitent privilege, which is a privilege you grant them, and you can take it away. And they can lose the legal right to even claim it. So
they don't have the legal right to do that in the UK. There is no such thing as priest penitence privilege in the UK.
Yeah,
just
there
like
you go.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, so when they release it, it's much easier to sue for what's it called, defamation in the UK, right? As I understand, the rules are much. I think they're fair there. I think they're more lean in the direction of protecting the people that should be protected. So anyway, that was really exciting news. Interestingly enough, a lot of these people, like the woman who wrote me this letter, they weren't around when I first came up there. They have an entirely very limited view of me and my past with gold and with the church. And it's kind of a long story. It's in my book, and I've talked about it a little bit, but it began with the Dianetics campaign, which we're going to talk about, working on that a little bit today. It began with, unbeknownst to me, how miserably gold was failing at making films. And we were hugely successful in LA making commercials. And that incensed David Miscavige. And he insisted on getting me up there. And it was really a sinister plot. But to me, it was kind of like, hey, how'd you like to come up and direct a film? We would be really honored. And I was thinking, well, what a privilege. But it wasn't. It was like, he was holding the entire shoot crew with the film crew at Gold. He was holding them captive in the galley, making them like scrub grease out of the fryer while they desperately looked for somebody. And then with me, they were all like, would you like to go out on a date with us? So it was like, but I always suspected this, but now people have reached out to me, specifically a former Sea Org member, a former Scientologist, who was an actual Sea Org officer, not just an exec, because you could be low in the Sea Org and high on the organization. This was an actual Sea Org officer who was the executive who approached me to come up there. And she's begun to tell me the whole backstory, what was going on behind it. So I'm starting to develop that story because it's really crazy. I'm sorry, Alex, you were going to say?
Oh, I bet. I was just going to say that this is a good starting place, because what we're going to talk about today is what it was like working at Gold and at Scientology Media Productions, and what it was like working with David Miscavige, and kind of bring in some of these stories of outsiders, actors, people you worked with that weren't committed Sea Org members. And I think to frame that, let's talk a bit about the importance of Gold and the Scientology media machine, because there is a policy in Scientology that says it is a suppressive act to get in the way of a gold shoot, right? Because the public image and the media content Scientology puts out is considered one of the most important things. Dissemination is the most important thing in Scientology, right? Selling books is important.
Yeah, right.
Getting the message out there. So David Miscavige is going to be quite involved in the running of this when you were there, because he's the head of the church and it's the most important thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about
He micromanaged it.
Yeah.
It consumed more of his time than anything. And then because it started to run really smoothly, I'll give you an example. When I first started, every little teeny detail was micromanaged. It had to be approved for him before we could start shooting everything, costumes, wardrobe, how I approached the film, where the actors would even stand on the set. Everything. And then eventually, by the time the Lisa McPherson tragedy died and he was drawn into that lawsuit and it was going to be gone for months and months and months of the time, he wrote me and he said, look, just send me finished films. So there was, when he came back from CW, from Clearwater, I sent him 3 films and we fixed 1 shot. So it was going pretty well. We were less micromanaged, but generally speaking. And then when I went to Scientology Media Productions to help open that, the level of micromanagement there was insane. And we can talk about that later, but people don't understand the true nature of what of the utter failure of Scientology TV, because nobody knows what it was really intended to be doing, because it missed that mark by a billion miles. And so what you may think it's failed because it's for this reason, for that reason, the other one, but it failed in the original mission that Miscavige set for it. So the original purpose that he set for it, never fulfilled it.
What was the original purpose?
It was to essentially be a media outlet, the Scientology's own media outlet, so that he could counter negative press. The idea was to take Freedom Magazine, which always had that purpose of being a whistleblower and exposing the truth. I mean, they investigated Lawrence Wright and they investigated the St. Pete Times, and then they do these articles like about the drought. I mean, they did some legitimate journalism. They hired very good outside journalists. They did a story on the drought in California, had nothing to do with Scientology. Amy Goodman, who is Democracy Now! Radio. There's a public radio station, a very progressive human rights advocates. They're on YouTube. It's fronted by a journalist, a woman named Amy Goodman. She used to invite people from Freedom Magazine on her radio show and say, they're the voice of Scientology, because they had done some work that legitimately was recognized. So Freedom Magazine, it kind of had some legitimate clout, like it had some cred. And then Miscavige, he turned it against like Marty Rathman and Mike Rinder when they were, speaking out to you. Like he made it into a rag that was intended to impugn apostates, Alex. Okay, so yeah. So that he kind of turned it into that. So his whole idea with the TV station was, I'm going to have a station so that these people who have treated me so unfairly, the media, I can turn my media against them. And in his own words, are we seven? Okay. In his own words, which he said this to me so many times, I was like, I wanted to say, yeah, I got it. He said, so that I can F them up. Like that was his little, that South Philly bully kind of accent. Yeah, I'm going to do this so I can F them up. Never able to pull it off. The people he hired to help him do it were so badly treated that they all left. I was so badly treated, I left, and then eventually left Scientology. And what all they did was they made a bunch of infomercials and said, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And that's all they did with it. And they just pretend like the negative press doesn't exist, like they're above it all. So that's $100 million failure.
Yeah, if you look at the Scientology Media Productions news announcement on the Scientology website, I was looking at this the other day to try and get a picture to use in the thumbnail. And it's very clear from the pictures of the studios that they have, like a news desk set up, right? And it's very clear that they were prepared to have like a news style program with presenters talking. And we've never seen that. That's never seen the light of day. The pictures are still there on the website, but Scientology TV just pumps out commercials. Yeah. There's no original content there.
Yeah, no, it's all completely psychotically turned in on itself. It's exactly. Do you remember? This is a little obscure, but do you remember when you were studying Scientology, and you came across it mostly pertains to auditing, but it's also, Hubbard says if it pertains to auditing, it also pertains to life, right? There's this idea of being interested and interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? That
like reach and withdrawal, right?
No, it's not like reach and withdrawal. It's like when you talk about the process of auditing somebody, of doing counseling, the auditor, the person doing it, that person is interested. They're interested in the pre-clear. And the person being audited, the pre-clear, they're interesting because they're the ones that are out for it, right? So the idea, one of the core fundamentals of Scientology as a philosophy is that you exist in a higher plane when you are interested. Now, this happens to be true. If you're curious about the world, it's like they say, you want to really learn? Listen, don't talk. That's what that is. Because if you're listening, you're interested. If you're talking, you're interested. Okay, the reason I'm saying this, I'm not trying to teach Scientology. The reason I'm saying this is that originally, Miscavige set out to create a media outlet that was interested, that was investigating things, that was revealing things. It was interested. And it ended up being just interesting, saying, la, 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 la. Here I am, look inside my church, meet a Scientologist, L. Ron Hubbard's life. And they don't even get it. They think it's like, there are a bunch of people standing around like applauding to them, giving themselves applause, right? Congratulating one another. And they don't get it, that in the ways that it not only misses the mark in terms of its original stated mission. And I know this because I did a 2-minute video, which they called a sizzle reel, which was the definition of the mission statement. It was the mission statement for the studio, and they took it to the CES show in Vegas, and they showed it to as many people as they could. And then they just walked away from it and said, nah, screw it. Let's show them who we are. But of course, nobody believes what they say anyway. So.
So
okay, true. I'm getting off my soapbox. Sorry.
No, it's good. And it's really good to talk with you. I think there was a lot of really good feedback off the last chat we had, talking about the marketing behind it all and how it doesn't really make sense what they're doing from a marketing perspective. And they think they're doing the best thing in the world, but actually it's very clear they don't know what they're doing when it comes to promoting Scientology in the best way. Yeah. And I thought this would be a good chance to kind of carry on that discussion and talk specifically about your work in the film department. One of the things we talked about before we went live was the idea of hiring non-Scientologist talent, right? And I wanted to ask what that was like, because people like Shlisan Soda, you've been on her channel, I have, from Cults to Consciousness. When I first spoke to her months ago, she mentioned that she was in as an actress a couple of little Scientology films, and she went to Gold.
Yeah, and she did 3 projects.
Yeah, this is something that happened quite a lot, right? Hiring outside talent. What was that like? When someone shows up in Hollywood and they're like, hey, I want to be an actor, and then they get this little paid job for Scientology. They may not know it's Scientology, and they might not know until they get there. Like, what was that like, working with non-Scientologists at the Gold base?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. First, let me just back up one little second and say about the comment about their marketing not being good. Their marketing is brilliant because they're marketing to donors. They're marketing to people, their own people, to give them money. That's who they're marketing to. In terms of marketing to people who aren't Scientologists, yeah, it's abysmal, but that's not what they're trying to do. I know this for a fact. I can support this because when we were struggling to open Scientology Media Productions, Miscavige blew up one day. Not at me, but he just, a little bit at me. But, within, maybe there was a few of us, maybe it's me, I don't remember. But his frustration was, I have donors that are asking me questions. I got to tell the donors something. And I'm like, oh, think about that. You're opening a studio because you got a bunch of rich people who were all sitting in the front row at the opening, and you gave them the spiel about the studio and how much their contributions would be, blah, blah, blah. So he was marketing to them, and now he's frustrated because he doesn't want to go back and be telling them about delays. He wants to be asking them for money for the next thing. So just to clarify that, his marketing is brilliant. It's aimed at the small group of people who have a lot of money. That's it. So anyway, but let's get to the root of your story. So generally speaking, I used to joke that Gold was keeping all the young starving actors from starving because they hired thousands of people a year. I mean, it's insane the number of people they hired. And holy moly, you want to know what, Alex? And you give me 1 second. I just realized that the MagSafe adapter fell out of my computer and my battery's going to go dead.
You sort that out. And while he does that, let's talk shit about Mitch again, guys. No, I'm joking. We love Mitch. Wanted to say hi, Mrs. J. Welcome to channel membership. Thank you for that. If you guys have super chats, we will get through them. I just want to crack on with the conversation a little bit more before I pull them up. So Andy Fabulous, Denver Stevo, your super chats are in the queue. We'll pull them up at the end. And yeah, just get your questions in the comments, and we will go through them as time goes on.
Yeah, I probably should have turned my camera off when I did that. No, that's the last. So I'm never going to make another comment about Aaron Smith-Levin's lights going dead.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, I know. I need to do a checklist, airplane pilots have. You have a checklist, computer plugged in, mic, camera focused. So anyway, they hired a ton of people. So the facility at Gold is really nice. It's probably the nicest facility that any of these young actors, and even to some degree pro actors, are ever going to be in, because everything is really plush and cush, and they're really well treated, and the staff that they're going to interact with are essentially forbidden from trying to recruit them into Scientology because it's not their job. This is not an organization that tries to get people into Scientology. And if they're told if they have a question, answer their question. If they have a complicated question, get somebody else to answer it. But don't be like engaging with these guys, because that's not why you're here. That's not why they're here, right? Plus, the Div 6 displays, the displays in every church, my project. There's a Div 6, a full Div 6 display unit in the lobby of the studio.
Wow.
So the talent are encouraged to just wander through there, look at videos, and to leave the staff alone. So just like in the org, if somebody has a question, you're supposed to refer them to a video. It's the same with the actors at Gold. Refer them to a video. The place is in the middle of nowhere. It's amongst a bunch of dairy farms, so it often just smells horrible. But when you first pull up there, like Shalise explained, because I talked about that with her in an interview, I contacted her because she said on air or on YouTube that she'd been to Gold. So I sent her, and I'm like, oh, we need to talk. And anyway, she lives like 10 minutes from me. So I think we're going to go have coffee one day.
That'll be great.
Yeah. And I was really honored because her husband, Jonathan, did the interview with her, my interview. And that was the first one he ever did. It was great. He's a director. He's a media guy, terrific guy. Anyway, and she explained, like, when you finally get there on the rolling green hills, these beautiful buildings and everything's landscape and manicured. And it's very pleasant for them. They get like $300 or whatever to just drive out there and spend a day being treated like an actor. And they get experience with all of the procedures, like going through makeup, going through, through makeup and wardrobe, and dealing, and then the protocol on the sets and how that works. And so it's really, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, that young actors, that are thankful for having had that experience.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
What would happen if someone was there and started being negative towards Scientology, for example, asking silly questions or saying things, I don't believe in Scientology, I think it's a cult and all of this? Was there like a system in place to deal with those? Or was it just like, because for me, in London, when someone came into the information center and was being toured around, they were asking me questions about, is it a cult and so on, I was trained to answer those questions and not like necessarily kick them off the property or anything like that. What was it like at Gold?
Well, it wouldn't be that different. There's mechanisms that can be activated even though they're not official, right?
Sure.
But in the case of a shoot, you don't want to kick a guy out, because then if he's playing if you've already on camera, he's on film, it's part of the shoot, you're kind of screwed. Your day's over. You've wasted all this money. So I don't recall that ever happening. I do recall hearing little things about, somebody said something, so let's never, somebody overheard somebody saying something at lunch, and so let's just not make a note, don't invite that guy back ever. Things like that. Or, that guy, he was a little too gay, let's not invite him back, because, the homophobia at Gold is worse than at places like where you were at the London org. They probably are restrained about it.
Oh, massively, yeah.
Yeah, because they're public facing and they want to put on the show. But at Gold, you're only allowed in there after you pass some kind of security. If you're a non-Scientologist actor, they're going to do a background check on you. They have all these PI tools that they use, and they're going to do a real serious background check. If you've ever been in prison, or blah blah blah, there's a bunch of things that just automatically exclude you.
And do the actors and actresses know that this background check is going to take place before
I think
they
so.
arrive?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do know, and then they also have to answer a questionnaire, which about if they have family members who are members of the media, or the military intelligence, things like that. So, and I'm sure that they lose a fair amount of prospects, acting prospects, because of that. But let's face it, most people, they're like, I don't give a shit about this. I'm going to go up there and get $300, whatever. No, I don't have any fan. You're not really. It's like the small print. When we buy a piece of software, nobody reads it. You get an update from Apple, you got to read 30 pages and hit a check, but nobody reads that shit.
Yeah, you just hit next, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, talking about the background checks and being picky. Like, how picky were the people who are hiring the talent in terms of, you mentioned before about voice actors and wanting the voice to be authoritative yet warm at the same time. What was that process like in terms of determining which talent to hire?
Well, believe it or not, it all went through OSA. Like they're the ones that were relied on to do all the background checks and so forth because they have the tools, right? It's not like Gold has, whatever those tools are. They have all the investigative tools. So those tools would be used to try to catch people that they considered problematic, right? So, occasionally I would approve a talent. Would really piss me off. I would approve somebody, and when you put a cast together, no, it's a puzzle. Like it's sometimes if you say no, you can't use that person, then you have to throw everybody out because it's kind of hard to understand. But you cast these people. Part of it is the way that they are distinguished as individuals. Like when you're making a film, there's a thing called character separation. I'm sure this is true in any kind of storytelling where you have individuals playing parts, but character separation is really an important thing. Like if you ever watched a film where there's two people that you get them confused because they look so much alike. You know what I'm saying? Like there's these two blonde girls and they're both kind of pretty and they're not sisters and they're not supposed to look alike. So sometimes what would happen is I'd lose a talent because they would do the background check too late. Like the talent people at Gold would screw up. They'd give me the submission. I'd say, oh, that person's terrific. And then they'd audition for me or I'd talk to them on the phone and go through all kinds of trouble. And then OSA would come back with a background check and say, no, they are a member of a pro-gay rights group or some bullshit. And then they'd say, no, you can't use them. And that was really upsetting because I'm like, what? I had to start asking. I would just send the submissions back until I had verification that everybody was okay. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I wouldn't look at this, right?
Yeah.
And so that meant they had to send everybody to OSA, not just the ones that I liked. And then OSA was saying, can you just send us the people you want to use? Because they don't really give a shit about your time, right? Like they don't want to have to vet everybody. So there was little fights like that. But I can tell you, when I first went up there, it was 100% staff talent, no outside talent, including voiceover talent, which was extremely problematic because that is, the two talents that are the most specialized and hardest to find are first and foremost singers. They're the hardest to find. Mm-hmm. If you want a singer for a TV ad or, to do a singing and for a film for an actress, they're very rare. They're very highly paid. They make the highest residuals of any talent for musicians and especially singers because they're like there's like 4 of them in the world, right? Apparently. So
a friend of mine, Chanel, who used to work in Div 6 with me at London, I think I told this in our last video, she joined the Sea Org and was shipped off to Gold as a singer for, I don't know, but her post as a singer, but I guess that's for the adverts and for
never made it
and all that sort of stuff. But she must have arrived at SMP.
I think that they probably, because when she joined is when all of that live entertainment and all that stuff was shifting to SMP. So she probably ended up there as a singer. And they do have some good singers there. It's really funny. It's really tragically because the people they have are so talented, can be doing so well.
But what do these, slight tangent, what do they do every day? Because it's not like they're producing so much content that as a singer you can spend the full Sea Org time on post, like 12, 14 hours a day singing. Like they don't have that much singing work to do. What else would they be expected to do? Would it be, would they have 2 hats, I guess?
Yeah, they would just do post work. They do post work within their division. There's a lot of stuff to do, but they're all very kind of angry and frustrated because they don't really have any meaningful work to do. Yeah. Pretty much everybody in the Sea Org is kind of angry and frustrated, and they just do busy work. I used to watch my assistant on days when we didn't shoot. I would watch her at her computer because my door would be open in her back. She'd be across the other room doing her, and she would sit there with one piece of admin, and she would just work on it all day long. A 5-minute job. She'd back up. And I used to look at her, and I felt so sorry. Towards the end, near where I was really like, she would literally, because if somebody walked in and she wasn't working, she'd get shit for it. So you literally have to often make shit up to do, because 14 hours a day. What are you going to do? But they, like the musicians at Gold, they're still musicians at Gold, and they work on music for video and film. But all the events got transferred, international events which they don't really do anymore, got transferred to SMP, and they have a pretty talented music department there. I don't know how they attract those people, but they rehearse they just rehearse like mad. They'd rehearse for shows, they'd rehearse for events, they'd write music for films. They'd some of them would also be mixers on the mix team, right? Because there'd be a lot of mixing to do, and it might take 4 people to be on a mix team. So then you'd have musicians on the mix team.
Right. And do we want to talk a little bit about voiceover as an outside talent? You mentioned
that's
that when you first got there, it was not possible to hire external talent. Obviously, that changed. And then there's a little story about the voiceover guy, right?
There's a few stories about that. It wasn't that it wasn't possible. It's just that, I don't know. I went up there and it was ridiculous. I had to do some things like this. When I started working on the tech films that needed voiceovers, and I was presented with the talent there, I was like, no, this is ridiculous. So I would look for voiceover talent. Like, it was a long drive from Gold to my house, like an hour and a half. So I listened to late night AM radio. This was back in the 90s. And at late night, they would run like these kind of like self-help and infomercial stuff. There was a company called Guthy Ranker, and they were the ones that platformed Tony Robbins originally. Like they put him on their platform. They're a self-help platform. And they would run these Guthy Ranker things. And one night they were running an audio series called How to Write a Resume. It was part of an overall, like, how to do better business. It was a business series. And I heard this guy's voice, and I was like, that's the guy I need for my tech film. That's how I would find most people. I would listen to radio, and I'd watch TV, and then I would say, find this guy's agent, find this guy. This guy was amazing. He turned out to be one of the most sought after voiceover for those types of things, because you need somebody who sounds commanding for Scientology. They sound commanding, they sound friendly, and they also sound like they 100% believe in what they're saying. That's a real talent. Like, if you can, I mean, I worked with people, they walk in and you just hand them a piece of paper and they read it, and it's some deep-seated piece of Scientology philosophy, and they sound like they're completely committed and they totally believe it. And not everybody can pull that off, right? That's like a talent. So this guy, and then after that, the ball started rolling. And then by the time we got up to Dianetics, we hired a guy named Lloyd Scherr, who you asked me about, right? Lloyd, he's a great guy, and he did, here, I'm just going to show you real quick. He won't mind. Just so you get a picture of him, Alex, I'm just going to share this real quick. That's Lloyd Scherr, okay? He's a great guy. He's got like tons of credits. He's worked for everybody in the world. He's one of the biggest dudes. He got talents in voiceover in LA. And I always screw this up when I go to, there we are. So sorry about that. Anyway, he was a great guy. And he was one of these guys that could come into the studio and he could do an audiobook 8 hours straight without barely taking a break. Most people can't go 4, but Lloyd is like a him. I heard his voice on I think it's on the History Channel or Discovery Channel. It's a show called Modern Marvels. And I really liked the show because, they show how, I don't know, how BMW paints its cars or whatever. Just really, how Rolex watches are made or whatever. I heard his voice. We contacted him. He came in. He did the Dianetics book, the book on, the audio book, which is, that's a massive book for those of you who aren't maybe not familiar with it. I mean, that's a big, thick book. That's not an easy book to do, and it's a lot of technical terms and blah blah blah. He did that, and then a few years later, we did the how to use Dianetics video. So we had Lloyd come in as a video guy, and then one day he stopped answering the phone, and they contacted him, and he's like, "I'm not going to work for you guys anymore. Like, I have now learned about some of the, I guess that when he first read the Dianetics book, he overlooked the the anti-gay stuff, the stuff on homosexuality. But as we continued to work with him, it became intolerable, and he just quit. He flat out refused. He's like, "There's no way I'm working for you guys anymore." It created a huge problem. I mean, we were halfway through the how to use the Dianetics, which the videos. So you write scripts, you do scratch VO, you edit it, you make changes to the script, you call the guy back in, you record some more of his voice. And, we're halfway done this process. We're fully committed to his voice. And he says, fuck off. I'm not going to work for you guys anymore because you're an evil cult.
And this guy has worked on not just the Dianetics project. He's worked on a lot of Scientology stuff, right? Because it's a voice that is quite familiar. It's one that, if it wasn't him, you must have hired someone else that had a very similar
so
voice.
Lloyd, what happened? What happened was we try to keep the voices very separate. Like he's the voice of Dianetics because you don't want to dilute your brand, and plus there's a policy in Scientology that you can never mix Dianetics, right? And Scientology, you cannot mix the two. You can never do an ad that says visit your local Church of Scientology and check out the Dianetics Center.
Exactly. Like when we used to go book selling, I've actually got, this is my old little business card, right? The Dianetics consultant, right?
Nice.
And on the back it says the dianeticslondon.co.uk, and it's the Dianetics Life Improvement Center, not the Scientology Center. There's nothing on this that said anything about Scientology, because it was always keeping separate.
It's not a physical space, right, Alex? It's not. It's right. It's not, the Dianetics Center is not an actual physical space.
No, it's the test center. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the test center, but it's not like the sign doesn't say Dianetics.
It says Center. Scientology and Dianetics Life Improvement Center is what it says on the front.
Okay. It says both.
But you go in, it's just a Div 6 like info center.
Yeah. Like, but it's not supposed to. No. They're not even supposed to be on the same sign. Like, I don't know how that happened. So anyway, we kept Lloyd Schur as the voice of Dianetics. Now there's a guy, an actor by the name of Shane Johnson, and Shane Johnson was a lot of the audience you've seen Shane Johnson. He was the one white guy on Power, on that TV show, and he's a very good actor. And I discovered Shane back when he was in his early 20s. We did a film called Beingness. You remember this film? It was like, it had an L. Ron Hubbard body double, and we shot over his shoulder, and
from behind. You never saw his face, right?
Yeah, because he wrote "Do That." He wanted to be in the film after he was dead, but his presence, whatever. And we weren't saying it was really him. It was a portrayal of him, right?
Yes.
And so Shane Johnson had just gotten out of he'd converted to Mormonism, married a Mormon girl, converted to Mormonism, got divorced, left Mormonism, and he was just kind of in not very good spirits when I first met him. I cast him to play the main messenger. He was an unbelievable actor, and I kept working with him over the years. Somehow, from an acting class, he became friends with Jason, not Begay, Jason Doran, the other Jason, Scientology actor. Well, Jason Begay is no longer in Scientology. And he got him to start doing some courses and things. So Shane was the male lead in the How to Use Dianetics video when Lloyd Schur went belly up and told us to F off, right? We were desperate for another voiceover. It was a huge problem. And I realized one day, listening to Shane on the set, that his voice was unbelievable. He would be perfect, but I couldn't have the guy in the film do the voiceover. So you know what I'm saying? Because that would just be silly. Yeah. It wouldn't work. So I told Miscavige, I'm scrapping the film. I'm going to reshoot it. I'm going to use Shane Johnson as the VO because I think it's that important. So then Shane did that video. And he's the guy you're thinking of because he went on to he's the voice you hear on every video on Scientology TV. That kind of youngish, husky. Sure. Yeah, that's Shane Johnson. And he's...
and it's such an interesting thing because that voiceover doesn't work in the UK. Like if you look at any, Scientology run ads on the Yeah, Scientology run ads on the Super Bowl and all of that over in the States. But whenever it comes, they don't run that many ads in the UK. But whenever they do, they redo them with a British accent. They have a different person do the voice.
Right.
So it doesn't come across as this weird American cult thing. And the voice that they use is different every time. But it's always a lot softer. It's more kind of, hey guys, this is Scientology, this is what we're doing, think about doing this, blah, 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 rather than that like voice that you hear in the Super Bowl ads where it's like, this is the most important, serious thing you've ever heard in your life.
Well, that
like,
yeah, the Super Bowl ads that you hear in the US, that would be Shea Johnson.
But what they did is like they would play those Super Bowl ads occasionally. So not every year, but occasionally they'll play the same ad here in the UK, but with a different voiceover, same words, but a completely different tone. I think just because it's, you know, it wouldn't work here, that American, you know, really important, really serious attitude, you know?
Right.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I know we did a lot of surveys and so forth about which countries. I do remember it coming up that all of the English speaking stuff needed to be localized. Like if it was for Britain, even not just Britain, if it was Ireland, if it was Scotland, if wherever it was, if it was Australia, we would need to get these different voices. They were paying a lot of attention to that, but yeah, that's how that's what happened with that. So then there's another one that you and I talked about. There's a book called The Problem of Work. You could describe that better than me because you were in charge of book sales.
Yeah, that was actually the first course I ever did in Scientology, was the personal efficiency course. So Problems of Work is a much smaller book. It's all about, you know, being, you know, personal efficiency is the key thing. So like one of the things I remember learning is the stable datum, right? It's if you are in an office or you're in your life and there's lots of people saying lots of things, there's confusion, you know, the idea is you pick something that you know is true and call that your stable datum. And from that, you can then work backwards to figure out what the truth of the situation is and therefore not be confused anymore. And Problems of Work is all about that sort of stuff. It's about kind of knowing what is real, what is not real, what is truthful, what isn't. It's a very small book, but it's a very good introductory lesson into Scientology. And the personal efficiency course was one of those courses that is delivered off the back of Problems of Work. And that includes watching a film and having a seminar, right? Which I think is what you're going to talk about.
Yeah. Hubbard's analogy in the book as a switchboard operator, you know, back in the old days when they would have to plug, you know, with the patch cords. And so the whole board lights up and she doesn't know what to do. She's totally confused. And basically what he's saying, it doesn't matter. Just do one and then everything will align around that. It's ridiculous. But, you know, it was difficult to put that on film because today's switchboards are they're just digital and there's just, you know, so I actually opted to make it look period and just do the original one, but, or something like that. I don't know, but we're into these PE films, these films that Alex referred to on the first course that he ever took. We're halfway through them. And the guy who did the VO, very good actor. He's done a number of films. He's a very good top voiceover guy. And we decided that this guy is the voice of the public films for Scientology. Stopped calling us one day. Finally, we got a hold of him. Finally, I got a hold of him. And he was like, I won't work for you guys anymore because now that I've read about this thing. And you know, we would always think, oh, somebody got to him. Oh, somebody got to that guy. Like there was some evil person whispering at the devil sitting on his shoulder. Yeah, an SP was sitting on his shoulder and whispering in his ear. Right? I mean, the fact is probably these guys got peer pressure because from their peers who said, hey, dude, you don't need to be doing this stuff, man. These are like evil people. Like, it's really easy to be fooled into thinking that it's a good organization because it's so slick on the surface. I mean, you know, you've seen the organizations like London Org, where Alex used to work, which is just beautiful, like exquisite building. And then you have Gold, which the facilities are fantastic. Scientology Media Productions is probably square foot per square foot. It's probably the most highly technical, you know, it's only whatever, 50 acres or something, but the technology in there. I mean, it was designed, the renovations were headed by some of the top restoration people in the world, and the designs were done by Gensler Architects, one of the top architectural firms in the world. So these people aren't messing around. So it's really easy to walk in there and have somebody say, this is our human rights initiative, this is our illiteracy initiative, this is our initiative to raise the level of morals in the world, and to be like seduced into this. And it's amazing. It's like it's so they attract very good people, and if they don't abuse those people, they'll stay. But
unfortunately, that's what they end up doing to everybody, because that's
even people that aren't Scientology. Yeah, even people that aren't Scientologists, eventually they start treating them like, threatening them with checks and exposing secrets about it's just the way they act. It's just anyway. So yeah.
So what happened with this guy?
That was it. He was done. He's like, I ain't working for you anymore. He's done. Yeah. So again, we got another guy who I'm sure is probably still working for them. He's very successful. You can always tell how successful these voiceover talent are by how much money they've invested in their home studio. Because
I thought you were going to say you can tell how successful a voiceover actor is based on how much work they don't do for Scientology.
Yeah, no, well, and that, the only problem with that is that means they're all successful because they don't like to.
Sorry,
they'll go. There's no problem. They'll, and like, okay, here's a perfect example. The guy that they finally got to do the voiceovers on the public films. He was just in the transition where he had just moved and he was building a home studio. Okay. So the person who's known as the audio production secretary or the audio prod sec, right, who would be over the audio division, who, let's face it, these people are they have tremendous knowledge, and they have had the opportunity to buy and test and use the best and most expensive equipment in the world. And in some cases, they've made their own equipment, which is very high quality audio equipment. I made a video. There's a short from the Gold Reaction video I did, and the short is called, Scientology Lie. Hubbard was an expert filmmaker. Well, he wasn't, but he was really good with audio. He actually was very good with it. So this audio production person, she supervised the voiceover talent in building his home studio for free, no charge. Spec the mics and the acoustic treatments and the kind of audio interfaces, and they'll do this kind of stuff for people. To obviously it's to their advantage because they're going to hire the guy a lot, and he's not always going to be able to come into their studio. So whenever possible, that we would have them come into one of our studios. But right. When you need something quick, especially a temporary video, they do it at home. And most of the guys can do as good audio recordings as you can do in your studio. So, sure. But yeah, it was. We had that happen with actors who no longer wanted to work with us, and not just like obviously Jason Begay who left or Larry Anderson. Those two guys. Let me see if I can count it up. 3, 4, 5. Right off the top of my head, 5 big expensive films had to be reshot when those two guys left.
Orientation being one of them, right?
Like Orientation, right?
The first thing you watch when you start in Scientology.
Yeah, Orientation being one of them, which...
And let's be honest, it was probably a good thing it got reshot because they took out that moment where it's, you could drive off a cliff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could walk out of this room right now and never mention Scientology again. You could do that, but it would be stupid. You could also jump off a bridge or blow your brains out. I'm sorry, I just will never forget that line.
Yeah, exactly. And they took that out, which is probably a good thing.
I did take it out.
Yeah, that was you. Wow.
Yeah, I took it out. Well,
great call, Mitch.
Yeah, no, Miscavige just suggested it. We had a conversation about it. I don't know who said it first. One of the two of us.
What was it like working with Miscavige so closely? I mean, you must have directed him on certain occasions. What was that like?
For one project, I directed him once because I didn't work with him on events or anything, and nobody directed him on events. Well, you have to understand, there's a thing that Hubbard called the zone of influence, right? Which is basically it's an observable fact. It's not a Scientology principle. People have a zone of influence, right? And he had a certain zone of influence. It's kind of like a bubble, like so. And he had various bubbles. Like the bubble that I was in was different than the bubble Mike Rinder was in, right? I wasn't beaten. I wasn't sent to the hole. I was, on the birthday, Christmas, expensive wish list, gifts, perks. Keep this guy happy because he keeps our crew from going off a cliff or blowing their brains out. And if I keep him really bubbled enough, if reporters want to talk to somebody about me, I'll have him talk to them because he only knows good, right? So that was my role for a long, long time. I mean, I spoke with the writers from St. Pete Times, now the Tampa Bay Times, a couple of years before they did the Truth Rundown, that article that, one of the bombshell that really started the downward spiral. Yeah. Joe Childs and Tom Tobin, the writers of that, they came out to Gold. I spoke with them for 2 hours, telling them what a great dude Miscavige was. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So, that's the kind of bubble I was in. You know what I'm saying? Plus, the bubble, it's lined with money. So you're in a bubble that's lined with money and all kinds of perks. And, Miscavige will roll his sleeves up and sit down with you and work for a couple hours. So, I mean, I sat across the table with him for hours rewriting that orientation script. And in that context, you're completely brainwashed, but he's being really smart. I mean, he's not a dumb person when it comes to messaging about Scientology and when it comes to tactics and strategy. He's like, high IQ. When it comes to being a human being, being emotionally connected to people, understanding what an authentic human experience is, he's very low IQ. Do you understand?
In other words, he's a psychopath or a sociopath, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't like to use technical terms, but no,
sure. But that's what that means.
He's total
lacking emotion and empathy.
Oh yeah, zero, none, and beyond that, feeding off of fear and emotional fear and emotional distress that you can cause in others. That it's like I refer to him and Marty Rathbun also, but Marty was like his dog. So you know how dogs emulate their owners. So
So what was that like, seeing that different side to David Miscavige?
I hardly saw the other one.
So for me, all I saw of David Miscavige was the shiny, lovely content that you made that made him look like this authoritative, amazing, really smart guy that's taking Scientology at like charging on with it, and what an inspiration. That's all we saw of David Miscavige, apart from the times he came to visit the org, and even then it was a similar sort of mindset that you were in. You're like, oh my god, this is the most important guy on the world. He's like the Pope of Scientology.
Yeah, no, we really believe that.
What was it like? Yeah, exactly. But what was it like when you actually got down to it and you were sat there with him in a room working the orientation film, or when you had to direct him for a video for SMP or something? Like, what was that experience like, seeing him more as a human than this untouchable Pope figure?
I never saw him as a human. I mean, he's a monster. I don't know what to say. I mean, well, he was always really nice to me, and mostly, not towards the end, but mostly nice. But it's complicated. I have another letter. I'm not going to read it now. I'm not going to go all off. But here's the last letter I got. You're not going to freeze it, but see, there it is. Or there's the RTC, whatever. We're going to go through this letter. I mean, this is the last letter I got from him, which was 2018. And it's really interesting to kind of look at his language and how he talks. It's very nice. He refers to us as close friends who had a working relationship. So it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, you're working with a person with a lot of authority. It's kind of like, you're the president's press secretary, right? So you're going to be saying yes, sir, and answering questions. You're going to be, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of that sort of atmosphere. Sure. For me, the crew, on the other hand, people would always be sort of delighted to be around him, like, oh, we're with the COB, as he insisted on being called. And I mean, it's hard to explain. It's, eventually when I personally witnessed, which was years into my work with him, when I personally witnessed him verbally and physically terrorizing 3 staff members, that sort of changed everything, because I was able to compartmentalize all this stuff I'd heard, the whole and this and that. And even though I'd seen a lot of verbal abuse in meetings that I'd been in, it wasn't aimed at me. So I could compartmentalize it. But when I saw that with my own eyes, then everything else, the lid on the compartment opens up, and you think, if he's capable of doing that, he's capable of doing all of it. So that really changed. But I mean, he's a very intense guy. So the one thing that you never want to do around him is hesitate. If he asks you a question, you better have an answer. If he says, what are we going to do next? You better say, this is what you never want to go, you get eaten alive. Literally, like, people will probably come and escort you away. The only time that I directed him, like actually really directed him on the set, like, stand here, say this, do your line differently, give him a line reading, whatever it was, before the church won its tax exemption in 93, when Miscavige was at war with the IRS, and he sponsored those 2,000 lawsuits against the IRS, which kind of brought them to their knees. He also covertly fronted this group called CATS, Citizens for an Alternative Tax System. People, there's a little article about this on Wikipedia, but it's really not talked about. And CATS was this quote unquote legitimate grassroots movement. It was run by an attorney by the name of Steve Hayes. His office, the headquarters of CATS, was in OSA. Like, their address was, I visited him, met with him, and he was at an office at OSA, right? He was completely a Scientology op and it got interest, like John McCain and some other people in the legislature. They were endorsing CATS. It was based on what's called a consumption tax. The idea was that states would collect all the tax, and then they would send some to the government, and then therefore the IRS would be obsolete, right? So Miscavige was running this thing, and I did a couple of videos with Steve Hayes, the lawyer, as a spokesperson, and he was not well suited for that job. So Miscavige decided that he wanted a star in a CATS video. So we built an office set, then had him on, and that's when I had to direct him. And it was like I had to, like, even if I for a moment didn't know what I wanted to do for the next shot, which is rare because you plan everything out, I would just make something up. I said, well, sir, just stand over here. We're going to go here. Where camera's going to here. You just got to go. Blah, 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 blah. You just got to go, because we flew to DC. This is a funny story. The second part of the video was David Miscavige. I wish I had this footage, walking around Washington, DC. We did like a walk and talk where we shot him in front of iconic locations like the Supreme Court and the Federal Trade Commission, and lastly, in front of the IRS building. All right. So I flew there with a guy named Kurt Whelan, who disappeared into the hole years ago. I've literally the other day I got an email from a German investigative reporters because Kurt was Viennese, asking me if I'd seen Kurt Whelan in the last. So anyway, Kurt was the CEO of OSA before Mike Render. And so I flew to New York, I flew to DC with Kurt, and then Dave somehow flew with Marty, and so, it was a very small group of us: me, Miscavige, Marty Rathman, Kurt Whelan, a cameraman, and a makeup artist. That was it. We were like, no permits, no nothing, and we did this shoot. When we got to the IRS building, I had envisioned him standing next to a sign that said Internal Revenue Service, and I didn't do my homework, because when I got there, the sign's that big. It's just a brass plaque next to the front door. And I was like, oh, I'm fucked, right? What am I going to do? So I said, there's a wide bank of doors up a flight of wide concrete stairs, like a governmental building entrance. So I said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go in there, and I'm just making this shit up. I want you to go in there, and I want you to just walk out the door. And as you walk out, just throw your thumb back at the side and deliver your lines. Just walk out like you own the place. So, anyways, which is a chapter.
We need to unearth that video. We need to find it. Someone must have a copy of it.
Well, it was used. That shot of him walking out and doing that at the IRS side was used in every Scientology international event. When they talked about the IAS and the IRS victory, they showed the sign because he's literally looking like he's walking out going, these guys are nothing. So he says, great idea. And he runs in the building. You go in the building, there's a bunch of security guards, and then further down, there's metal detectors, but he doesn't have to go to the metal detectors. He's got an earpiece in. I got a walkie-talkie, and I say action. He walks out. The cameraman blew the shot, missed the zoom. So he goes back in, and I hear in the earpiece, this woman security guard is now talking to him. Excuse me, sir, can I help you? And he's like, oh, no, I'm about to leave. I yell action. He goes, he comes out. We get the shot. I'm like, okay, we got to get one more. Make sure we got it. So he goes in. We do it one more time, except this time he comes out. He's got like 4 security guards following him, right? And so I'm
that's
like,
the money maker. That's the money shot right there.
And it exists someday. And so now there's this crowd of, they got like their gray slacks and their blue blazers and, their little earpieces. And I'm sure they're all heavily weaponed. They're like Secret Service type people. They're surrounding Miscavige and Kurt Wieland are in a confab with these guys talking about. They want the tape. The IRS security. They're like, no, you don't have a permit. You're handing the tape over, right? Meanwhile, 15 feet away, the cameraman and me and Marty Rathbun are standing there, and I noticed Marty's like talking to the cameraman, and then I noticed out of the corner of my eye, the cameraman is taking the video out of the camera and slipping in a blank tape. He hands it to Marty. Marty drifts off, jumps in a cab, and disappears. And so Miscavige capitulates and says, okay, you can have the tape. They gave him a blank tape. We leave, and we got the shot. So anyway, I was always really proud of that. And plus, it was soon after that he burst into that building unannounced and said, I want to talk to Fred Goldberg, the IRS commissioner. And I think it was because I told him, just go in there like you own the place. And I'm serious. I really always thought that was the day that he decided that he could walk in there and just bully those people.
And that's exactly what he did. And that's what ultimately led to Scientology getting a tax-exempt status, which they still have today.
Yeah, exactly. If you remember the Tom Cruise interview with Matt Lauer.
The famous turtleneck video, right?
Yeah, now Matt. Remember he used his name over and over and over again?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Put your manners back in. Put your manners back in. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt. But that's a Miscavige tactic. Like if he had to meet the president of the United States, he'd be saying, now, Joe. Now, listen, Joe. He wouldn't call him Mr. President or sir or nothing. It's one of his bully tactics. Like I've seen him do this. It's where Tom got it, right? It's why Tom was talking about Laura that way. And I guarantee you, when he met with Fred Goldberg, the IRS commissioner, he sat down with him and he said, now, Fred. And he just said over and over, now, Fred, this is ridiculous, Fred. So anyway.
I bet. Well, Mitch, look, this has been fascinating. Thank you. Should we jump into some Q&A? Is there anything?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let's do it. I'm just gas bagging now.
All right. No, I love it. I love all of your stories, and that's why I love doing this and having you on. Denver Stevo asked a while ago, Mitch, let me grab that phone number. I need to give Bob Ferris a call. That was the gold.
Yeah, I know. Gold. I'll give it to you. Bob Ferris ain't coming to the phone. Okay, so... My advice would be there's some a lot of local agriculture around gold, and there's a lot of crop dusters. They're really cheap, $50 an hour, right? So pilots are all starving and like they're a bunch of drunks. Go hire one of them to fly over and drop pamphlets. That would be more effective.
That's a great idea. For those of you who don't know, Liz Ferris is a former Scientologist. She has her own channel called Pokemon and Cults, I think. And her dad is still in Scientology. He is held by the Sea Org against his will, we believe. at the Gold Base, the international base, and we're trying to find her dad. For context, she was told that her father had actually passed away 20 years ago. Scientology told her he died. And then they phoned up 20 years later asking where he is, which gave her the indication that he wasn't in fact dead and was in fact alive and had tried to escape. So this is the campaign. We're trying to find out where Bob Ferris is, check on his welfare. So go and check out Liz Ferris's YouTube account if you haven't already. It's a really important campaign, and we need to do everything we can to try and find a dad. Steve Britton, Reckless Ben's infiltration of Scientology is both hilarious and cringe at the same time. Did you see this, Mitch?
Reckless Ben's infiltration of Scientology is both. Oh, did I see the Reckless Ben? Yeah, he's great. I thought I posted the number. I guess it didn't. Oh, you know what? I think maybe I put it in the private chat. You know what? Here, let me just do it again. Just for the heck of it, let me post the number, okay? 951-654 and 53475.
And there's the link to Liz Ferris's channel. Thank you, Goldie. Thanks for putting that in there.
Okay, I put it up there. Did you see it?
Here is the number for Gold if you want to give him a call.
Yeah.
Dawn Lambert asks, did you know Tony Rockcliffe?
No, never heard of him. What did he do? What is his post? If you put it up, that might ring a bell.
All right. Dawn, if you're still there, let us know a bit more information. We can see if Mitch has any memories.
Yeah, I never heard of him.
Anti-Harju, Alex and Mitch is the perfect SB combo. Both great people.
Yeah, we're friends. Like, we're genuinely friends. So it's just like that's like
Mitch and I talk quite a lot. It's great.
Yeah, Alex is a closer friend that I had for 30 years in Scientology, and I've never even been in it. I'm serious, because it's not that you're such a good friend; it's that that's how horrible they are.
Yeah.
So, but you are a good friend,
and also like learning.
Helpful.
Yeah, and learning that friends are here to stay and are not going to drop everything just because they're told by someone else that you're a suppressive person. That's what hurt me in Scientology. It was like, you're being kicked out now and suddenly you have no friends because they all think you're the devil. But yesterday they loved you, and it's just all very fake.
Yeah, well, you went over to the dark side. That's how they like to think of it.
Exactly. Andy Fabulous, thank you so much for the super chat. Hi, Mitch. How about that letter from Kathy Fraser?
Yeah, that was it. The letter that I was reading, that was from Kathy.
All righty. Denver Steve-O, another super chat here, $10. Thank you, Denver Steve-O. Mitch, Scientology is hosting a documentary showcase this Friday, which doesn't look very Scientological. What was their angle hosting this programming?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a long story. I'll try to make it short. Okay, so one of the things that Miscavige talked about was making the studio available to what he would refer to as like-minded groups, right? For example, another religious group, giving them an opportunity to take advantage of the studio. It's like a PR thing. And he's like, hey, we got all this facility. The B'nai B'rith Society, which is a Jewish, what do you call it? Like, they raise funds to help people and to help homeless, whatever. I can't remember what you call that kind of organization. Benevolent. They're like a benevolent society, B'nai B'rith.
Right.
Every year they would do a telethon on TV to raise money, and they did it at KCET, which became Scientology Media Productions. And so Miscavige said, hey, tell the B'nai B'rith if they want to come and use our facility, all they have to do is pay for their own food, and we'll just let them use it for free, which is a pretty generous offer. They never took him up on it. So then one of his other ideas was, why don't we showcase young documentary filmmakers who make like-minded programming? In other words, programming which would promote human rights, caring for the environment, things like that. Obviously, what would also be like-minded would be anti-bullying and LGBTQ plus rights. Those would be like-minded if you claiming to be in favor of human rights, but of course they wouldn't touch that. So then what they discovered was people aren't just going to give you their films to show, like, thank you. He actually thought, young filmmakers, documentarians would come to him and go, oh, you'll show my film, thank you. They're like, no, you got to pay broadcast fees for that stuff. So he decided, okay, fine, we'll pay the broadcast fees, and let's decide which films to get on there. So by that time, I had been busted, and I was at Gold, and I was like, ethics bay, DB, right up there, working for half the money I was making, trying to get back in the world. And I got a dispatch, interoffice memo from somebody that it was not to me, but I was copying on it, that said they had the people at S&P had failed so miserably to pick documentaries that would make sense to play on Scientology TV, that he said, you guys are a bunch of DBs. Have Mitch Brisker do this. He'll know what to do. So it's like an example of how one day you're a piece of shit, and then the next day,
you're the best.
Yeah, but then I have people come in on me, and they're like, "You better fucking get this done now and make us look good." And they're not saying it like that, but I'm like, whatever. So while I was up at Gold, I developed a criteria for this is how you pick a documentary, and I created tags and a tag cloud, and that any film that they showed would have to have a certain level of tags. I have them written down somewhere. They're brilliant. They have to do with community and connection, humanitarianism, all these different things. And if you tag a film, you go through the documentary, watch it, and then you tag it if it had these points. And then a film had a certain number of points. They completely disregarded it, and they put the stupidest shit on there. I mean, it just amazes me. You look at the documentary thing, and they bring the filmmakers in, and they do interviews with them. They really make them feel warm and welcome. A few of them have spoken out and said, "Hey, I didn't know. I mean, they paid me whatever broadcast fees. They get a license, like a 3-month license or something, to show the film. But that's the reason why you see such stupid shit, is because they don't know. They don't know what is relevant to what it is that they do. Like, they don't see themselves. They don't. You hold up a mirror, I don't know what they see. So anyway, that's the real.
Exactly. All right. Well, Auntie Harju, thank you for your super chat. Joni Cummings, Mitch, we love your stories. Very, very true. Thank you again for the super chat.
Yeah. By the way, I'm available for $5 a minute. I'll read to you at night. Just I have a 1-800 number. No,
I thought that was just me, Mitch, that you offered that service to. I thought we were meant to keep quiet about that.
Sorry, Alex. But Joni, thank you. We love having you as a subscriber.
Absolutely. Space Cadet Brett, 99% sure an NDA isn't valid if it's to cover up a crime or if a crime has been committed, and we know an immeasurable amount have been. Don't let the bastards grind you down, Mitch. SPTV's got you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do feel in the loving embrace of a truly caring community. So,
yeah, that's one thing I've learned is SPTV is so supportive and welcoming. It's the complete opposite of what Scientology make you believe, that we're all these horrible, degraded beings that want nothing but people to, not succeed in life. Well, actually, I've made loads of friends doing this, and I've even got a T-shirt to prove it that says potential trouble source.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, and we're very diverse. I mean, we're old, we're young, we're gay, we're straight, except the Scientologists of us, the ex-Scientologists, like you and I, we're also very white, because Scientology doesn't like people of color. So I just have to point that out. We are an incredibly diverse and welcoming group, and thank God for the Never Ends, because and the other, the Watchers, or we'd have no color, because there's it's a very white organization.
Absolutely. Joe DeSeppo, thank you. Welcome. Hello, Joe. We love Joe. Let the Mitch Terry be. Play some banjo later.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we should do that. Joe's inspiring me to get back into playing the banjo. I've been playing on and off since I was 13, and
Joe is fantastic.
I mean, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. Yeah, we've recently become friends. She's such a terrific person. And I was so blown away by her instruments. I'm going to brag about you, Joe, just for a minute. She's a luthier and makes amazing instruments. It made me want to start playing music again. So
Yeah, she's great, and she has a radio channel as well that she interviewed me on fairly recently here in London, and she talked about her own cult experience on a channel recently. She started to get the confidence to speak about it, which is great. And Joe, we just wanted to say thank you for all your support, and for everything that you do for helping us in our community. Trev Anon, Shalise was raised Mormon, not a Scientologist. Yes, that is true. She's a Mormon. She was never a Scientologist, but she was hired as an actor because she was an actor in Los Angeles to perform as an actor in a Scientology film. She was never a Scientologist.
Yeah, unfortunately, when she was there, I was working in LA, so we never crossed paths. So
I did. When I first saw you come up on a channel on SBTV, I actually sent her a screenshot and said, Shalise, do you know this guy? Because he used to work at Gold around the same time you were there.
Oh, really?
If you know him, I'll introduce you. You totally need to do a video together. And she was like, no, I don't recognize him. You might have been there, though. There were lots of people I don't know. So I'm glad you eventually hooked up and did that.
Yeah, and then when I heard this, I forget her name, the ex-Scientologist girl with all the tattoos, short hair. And she's
Danny.
Right. And she did a great interview with her. And Shalise said that she'd been a ghost, and then I sent her an email. I'm sure she remembered that you had also. Sure. Anyway, it's such a great coincidence.
LRH is here. He's back. He's here. Hello, sir. And he said, if you get the chance, ask Mitch about the Baraka documentary.
I'm going to watch it. I've never seen it. I do know about it, and it's on my list.
There we go. Fantastic. Joe DeSeppo again. Alex, is the branding Dianetics because Scientology's name has such a bad rep? Yes and no. It's kind of a two-pronged approach. Dianetics and Scientology are meant to be separate things. When L. Ron Hubbard, very briefly, when L. Ron Hubbard started this whole thing, he started with Dianetics, the modern science of mental health, or as John Atack calls it, the mental science of modern health, which I think is quite funny. It was meant to be the scientific study of the way the mind works, and it's not really a spiritual thing. That was Dianetics. Scientology came later when L. Ron Hubbard started talking about the spirit and the Thetan and all of this. So they are two separate subjects, and you can go into a church Scientology and just do Dianetics auditing. It's called Book 1 auditing, and not do anything on the meter and all this sort of stuff. So they are two separate things. I can only speak from my experience in London. People have heard of Scientology more than they have heard of Dianetics nowadays. That wasn't the case way back when. But if we were out on the street, for example, selling books, we were selling Dianetics, we wouldn't have, Scientology, the fundamentals of thought out on the table, because we want to be seen as Dianetics. We don't want people to be turned off just by the Scientology Association. So it was used, yes, because Scientology has a bad rep, but actually if you go down to it, it's because they are technically two different things, and like Mitch said earlier, you're not meant to mix them. They're meant to be promoted separately.
Yeah, that was my experience. I know, interestingly enough, when I first was working on the Dianetics campaign back in the mid-'80s, we had done a bunch of surveys, and at that time more people had heard of Dianetics than Scientology, and the name L. Ron Hubbard was more associated with Dianetics and Scientology. So we used it as what I call a Trojan horse. Essentially, it was like the Trojan horse to get people into Scientology.
Yeah,
we could do a whole. We could do Alex. We could do a whole hour on the relationship between Dianetics and Scientology and how Dianetics got started, and
let's do that for the next one. I love that idea.
Yeah. No, we should do that.
Let's crack on with the last couple. There's 3 more chats in the thing, and then we'll bring it to a close. Love Sherlock. Enjoying you both. Much love. Teehee. Thank you, Love Sherlock, for your super chat. That's very kind. Edwin Pitcher. Hi Mitch. This is about helping people who got out of Scientology. What therapy helped you?
Writing a book helped. Okay, first sitting on my couch playing Overwatch for 1.5 years. Helped me.
Nice.
We still need to do a game stream.
100%.
Yeah, because I actually connected with people, gamers and whatever. I was like, oh, I'm talking to real people. That, writing a book, and then I was lucky that I actually found a good therapist, because everything I'd heard about therapists was I had been lied to about. And, according to Kathy Frazier at Gold, I am following the dictates of someone, your psychologist. So anyway, but yeah, I'm not following anybody's dictates. That's the wonderful thing about being out of Scientology. So you can stop following dictates. I hope that answered your question, but it's also, and the thing I really left out was interacting with this community has just been so helpful, because, you know, a lot of people left 10 years later, they looked back, they wrote a book, they reminisced, they reflected. That's 100% valid. I think that experience they had in life, allowing them to reframe their experience. I didn't do that. I left 15 minutes later, I started talking out. And I mean, people have written to me, wow, you're changing. And it was not my intention, but I wanted to do this raw. I wanted to go through this I wanted people to know. I wanted to say, hey, you know, so that has been incredibly therapeutic. And anybody who's under the radar and they're thinking about talking, unless obviously you don't want to threaten your family connections and your business connections, and that's understood. But if you're just wondering if you should, and you get that rush of adrenaline telling you no, I'm telling you, once you get on the other side of that, right, Alex?
Yeah, I think educating yourself is one of the most powerful and important tools I found anyway. Like, the more I read, the more I watched, the more I learned about other people's experiences, their stories, and what they've learned, the more it helped me. And there's no pressure from anyone on any side to like try and force you to go down this recovery journey quickly. Take your time, and you'll get there, and we're all here to help each other. You know, if you need help leaving or escaping Scientology, the Aftermath Foundation exists. They will help you. If you go to the aftermathfoundation.org, they'll help you get out and start a new life and land on your feet. I'm actually working on a project called Cause Over Life at the moment, which hopefully will be launched by the end of the year, which is a non-profit that I'm starting that's all about giving people those resources that they need. It will be an online resource hub that's free to access, and you can go and, you know, it will give you books to read, you know, reports to read, things to watch, things to listen to. And you can just browse this and find out what resources you need to help you in your recovery, including mental health resources. Like, if you want to see a therapist, you know, it might have a database of therapists who already know about Scientology that can help you. So that's something that we'll be launching very soon. But until that happens, reach out to us. You know, we're always happy to speak to people and help them. Love this username.
You know, I should
go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I should also mention I read a few books just to finish up that question. There was a few books I found helpful. I found a book about, it was really funny. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it now, but it was called something about female covert narcissists. Because right after I got out of Scientology, I found myself in a really strange relationship that was, fortunately, it was short-lived. It was very much like a cult. In reading about that, it sort of opened my eyes about the sort of these kinds of psychopathic personalities that really can destroy you emotionally. And from that, I found the book, The Psychopath Next Door, and a couple of others, you know, the Body Keeps the Score. There's some very good books. Psychopath Next Door, anybody who was in Scientology. I kept flipping to the back to see that, you know, this book was written about David Miscavige. My dog is moaning. I think he has to go badly, maybe.
All right. Well, very quickly.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I'm letting him. He's going outside. He's fine.
We've only got a couple more. One. Sorry,
please.
Did you want to finish that point before we carry on? Or are you good? No, you're good. Okay. Hubbard Intergalactic Communications. Greetings from Target 2 ML. Much love.
That sounds like an X to me.
Yeah, it does. That's a very good name.
The
ML is much love. That's how we used to sign off our letters when we would write dispatches and stuff to people.
Yeah, by the way, you're going to the RPF ML. You know, it just doesn't matter what the letter said.
Yeah, you're a piece of shit.
I just killed your dog. Yeah, I just killed your dog. Much love, Mitch.
Much love, Mitch. Yeah. Joni Cummings, thanks for your super chat. Mitch, I'm glad we're Facebook friends. You and Alex are awesome. Mitch and Alex, I have fell asleep listening to both of you.
Yeah, well, assuming Joni's a woman, she's the first woman who's fallen asleep next to me in a long time. No,
Mitch.
Just kidding. My
delicious things. Thank you for your super chat, $2. Looking forward to more Alex and Mitch streams, guys. It's been so great. Mitch, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Alex,
coming on. for anyone that wants to support the channel, you know, super chats are great. Thank you for everyone that's done that. Have you got a buy me a coffee set up, Mitch, or not?
I do, and I've gotten more coffee than I can drink.
Amazing.
I'm constantly running to the bathroom. No, it's really appreciated. Also, I have an Indiegogo. A link is on my community page. I have an Indiegogo campaign. I'm raising a little bit of money so I can. I'm trying to finish my book. The uploads and the typesetting and the conforming the file and all that stuff. It was taking so long to do it myself that I realized that I needed to hire somebody, and so I'm almost. It's only $2,000. I'm almost there in like less than a week, and that will help me a lot to just get the book out sooner. So we have a couple of things to talk about in the future. We have this whole Dianetics evolution thing, the early stuff, right? And there's also, we could definitely talk more about how Scientology Media Productions is an utter failure in terms of missing the mark on its on its initial mission. And also I've been uncovering information about the insidious plan that was instigated to get me up to gold. And when I get that nailed down, I really want to be talking about that.
Yeah, so absolutely.
There's some agenda.
I'd happily have you on my channel every day, Mitch. I love our conversations. And
yeah, it's great.
Let's figure out another video soon. For anyone that wants to support my channel, you can buy me a coffee. I've got merch. This is one of the t-shirts that I
love
made.
That shirt.
Merch, potential trouble source. And super chats obviously are great, but buy me a coffee is better because it doesn't.
Yeah, Alex, I have
30%, which is
yeah, exactly. I have to say, the girls like bad boys, so that's a pretty nice brand. I might get one of those. They always say that they want the,
I'll send you one, Mitch. I'll send you. There's a couple of different variations. Maybe I'll make one specially for you. We'll figure it out. But guys, thank you so much for joining. If you want to support Mitch, you know where to buy him coffee. You've got the Indiegogo. If you want to support me, you can buy me a coffee. All of that stuff's in the description. And thank you so much, guys. We'll catch you very soon on the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.